to Fidelis. This is Cassie and Lauren, and whatever child is trying to break into my room right now. We are really looking forward to Christmas, Advent. We're almost at the fourth Sunday of Advent, and of course the next day is going to be Christmas, so don't forget to go to Mass on Sunday and Monday, or Saturday night and Monday morning, or however you want to do it. But hi Moses, that's Moses joining us. So anyway, today we want to talk about modesty, sex, which for some reason I feel like sex comes up in this broadcast like every time we talk, and Puritanism, and how Puritanism has affected the way that we view our bodies, the way we dress, and the way that we interact with other people. Do you want to sit with me? Okay. So, like about 10 years ago, somebody explained to me like the influence that Puritans had on America, and it really profoundly shifted my understanding of why America views Christians a certain way. So everyone knows in the media and in the Hollywood and the culture, Christians are viewed as these curmudgeons, these sticks in the mud who don't like fun, who think sex is evil, who think sex is just really for procreation and nothing else, and who believe that they're damned to hell if they break any of these very strict, strident laws that our faith imposes on us. And someone explained to me a long time ago that is basically what Puritans believed. And Puritans had a profound effect on the founding of America and the way that American Christianity was perceived until the present day. But the fact is that Puritanism was founded in reaction to Catholicism. So a few weeks ago, we talked about the Reformation. The Reformation, you agree? The Reformation happened in the 1500s, and it was an attempt to reform the Catholic Church. It was unsuccessful, but it did spur the start of Protestantism. And then the Church of England was the first Protestant church, and the Puritans were a sect of English Protestants who thought that the Church of England didn't go far enough in breaking away from the Catholic Church. So at the time, the Church of England still looked very similar to the Catholic Church, still maintained some of the practices and doctrines of the Catholic faith. And the Puritans were a sect of Christians who thought that the Protestants were still too Catholic. And so what they did was kind of revolt and try to reform the Reformed Church. And so this is when you start to see that spiraling out of Protestantism, where one church tries to reform the other, and then it breaks off into a new church. And now today we just have thousands of Protestant sects, because there's not any unity when you don't have basically a pope that is kind of keeping everybody in one piece. And so the Puritans, because they couldn't really reform the English church, and the Church of England got sick of them trying, basically sent them away, and they came to America. Well, the Puritans viewed this move to to America as their version of an exodus, like the exodus of the Israelites. And they viewed themselves as entering into this Old Testament covenant with God, where God had set them apart as a chosen people to start, to revive what Christianity was always meant to be. They did ascribe to Calvinism, so they believed that Christians are born in total depravity, that there's nothing good about us, that we're basically wretches who rely on the grace of God, which we do fully rely on the grace of God. If God stopped thinking about us for even a second, we would cease to exist. But Catholicism teaches that we are created inherently good, that we are reflections of the Creator, and that the fallenness of our state is a consequence of original sin. And so there is redemption available for Catholics, for Christians who turn to Jesus and recognize that Jesus died to save us. And so there's just a fundamental difference in the way that humanity is viewed between Calvinists and Catholics. And the Puritans very much brought that Calvinistic view to America. And together with the Pilgrims, basically the Puritans and the Pilgrims founded America. They're the people who colonized the original states, and their influence was just massive on the United States. And it really does continue to this day. Yeah. So kind of what the main message that we want to communicate today is that the reason, a large part of the reason why Hollywood and the media and culture perceive Christians, and particularly Catholics, as being completely anti-fun and viewing the body as a bad thing is because of the influence of the Puritans. And we're still conflated to this day with that theology. But in reality, Puritanism was a rejection of Catholicism. So it's kind of bizarre that we are viewed as the same thing, because almost everything about our respective faiths is completely different. One thing that always comes back to me when I'm thinking about the Puritans is, I think it was Archbishop Sheen, I'm not sure, but he said nobody really hates Catholics. They hate what they think Catholics are. And the media and Hollywood have done such a good job of making people think that Catholics are Puritans. And so we're portrayed wrong and misunderstood. And we want women to feel confident to stand up and say, that is not what we believe. This is what we believe. It's liberating, it's beautiful, and we find happiness practicing this faith. So that's kind of to kick us off today. We have a lot to talk about in terms of how this has affected like the Catholic view of modesty. We are always seeing different articles going around that kind of make us, have to rethink our position on modesty and sex. So Cassie, I'll hand it over to you from there for any thoughts that you have, and I'm going to try to get this little one to go play.
Well, one thing in regards to Puritanism that I think you really see today with, especially in evangelical culture, and even in some Catholic circles, is this idea of purity that, in my opinion, is really harmful. It's not an issue of sex should be between a man and a woman in marriage alone, because that's not wrong. But it's this idea of sex as almost being something dirty that, that is necessary, but not something to be enjoyed or, like when you see in purity culture, this idea that you have to keep yourself pure for marriage, for example, what does that teach girls? It teaches a teenage girl that, oh, well, as long as you're a virgin, you're pure. Okay, well, so what happens when you get married and now you've had sex? Are you not pure anymore? And heaven forbid that you slip and don't remain a virgin before marriage, because then what does that say about you? Mm-hmm. Then it becomes this issue of, oh, well, now you're damaged goods. And it's just this incredibly unhealthy view of life. And it's not good for anyone to look at it that way, because, as you said, it's this idea that the body is this inherently bad, dirty thing. And it's not healthy. There's nothing healthy about it. And sex is not dirty. Sex is not bad. It should be kept within the confines of marriage, obviously, but sex in and of itself is not something that's bad. It's not something that should be hidden. It's not something to be ashamed of. If you're married and you enjoy having sex with your husband all the time, then honey, good for you. That is not a bad thing.
Right.
But there's this culture that, and it's very strange, the United States, because you have, on the one hand, you've got Hollywood and in the movies and TV and in the overall culture where sex is just everywhere. But then on the other hand, you have in a lot of evangelical and Christian and even Catholic circles where sex is this, thing that has to be hidden, and it's dirty and bad. And it's this really weird, just dichotomy.
Right. Right. And it's dangerous because it's going to lead people to misinterpret the whole meaning of sex and the theology behind it. So, what do we know about sex as Catholics, or what do we believe about it? We believe it's unitive and procreative. So, I think that Hollywood, and probably on purpose, portrays Catholics and all Christians as only believing in the procreative aspect of sex. So it's this thing that has to be done in order to reproduce our species. And that's not at all how the church views it. It has a dual meaning, and you cannot separate one from the other. So you can't separate the procreative from the unitive, or the unitive from the procreative. In order for it to be unitive, you have to be in the sacrament of marriage, because the unity happens between spouses that have made a promise to each other, which is their marriage vows. They've entered into a sacrament, and they renew those vows every single time they come together. The procreative is the fact that obviously that act could lead to a child. And so if you try to separate one from the other, you're perverting the meaning of sex in the first place. And we, as Catholics, we want to convey that there's beauty in both of those purposes of sex. So I think we have to stop letting the media and the culture portray sex as something that it's not, and something that we don't believe that it is. So we have to be more outspoken for those who are comfortable with it. I think about just putting those myths to rest, and just being bold to stand up and say, no, sex is unitive and procreative, and it's a reflection of the unity that happens within the Trinity. It's a beautiful thing with a beautiful theology, and we can't let the Puritan idea that it is dirty and that it is kind of like a result of our depravity, that sex even exists, to continue to be perpetuated in the culture.
Well, and even I feel like there's such a difference, and it doesn't get really said, because like you pointed out, a lot of things that people think about the Catholic Church are really more based in Puritanism than actual Catholicism. But even someone who has sex before marriage, which I did, mm-hmm. When you have this Puritan view of it, this person is damaged goods forever.
Right.
There's no coming back from that. You're, mm-hmm. Think of like the Scarlet Letter.
Right.
It's done. It's over. You're damaged. You're not pure. And that's not the Catholic way of looking at it. Whether it's, oh, I had sex before marriage, or, oh, my husband and I were using birth control. Mm-hmm. The Catholic Church doesn't look at it as you do something wrong and now you're destroyed forever. Right. There's always that chance at redemption. There's always that ability to right the wrong. And because sex is an inherently good, beautiful thing, just because maybe you had sex before marriage, or maybe you were using birth control, that doesn't mean that it's going to be bad, the rest of your life, or that, you can't make the situation right again.
Right. And I think to say that you are permanently damaged by a sin is an affront to God, because it says your mercy and your forgiveness are not more powerful than anything I've done, which is just absurd if you think about it. If you really believe God is all loving and all powerful, which Scripture clearly communicates that he is, how could you possibly do something that's beyond his mercy? It's an affront to him. And we know very clearly as Catholics from Revelations to people like St. Faustina that he is longing to offer that mercy, that he created a sacrament and made it widely available just to access that mercy. So obviously when we sin in any way, whether it's sex outside of marriage or we ate too much, anything that we do, we should go to him immediately. Talk to him in private, in our hearts, tell him that we're sorry, ask for his forgiveness, and then go to confession and have that stain of sin removed. And this is another beautiful thing about Catholicism that gets completely blown out of sight by the fact that we're conflated with Puritans, is that we have access to the mercy of God mm-hmm. all the time. And that God is longing to offer that mercy. The Puritan view of sin and mercy is so perverted. It says that you're born in depravity, first of all, and if you slip up even a little, you're pretty much screwed. And God has chosen ahead of time who's going to heaven and who's going to hell, regardless of how a person's life is lived. So you just live in fear your whole life, not knowing what your destination is going to be. And that's not the Catholic view. So we have to proclaim the mercy of God and bring that hope. I think if Puritans thought that they were supposed to be a sign of a covenant with God, Catholics have to take on the role of being a beacon of his hope and offering that to the world and telling people who might feel that they are damaged goods because they've made a choice in a moment of passion that was wrong. We have to tell them, no, that's not how God works, and God is always wanting to offer his mercy to you.
And I know that one thing that I think should also be pointed out is that there might be people who watch this and think, well, oh, this is all really interesting, but what does it have to do with today? Because there aren't Puritans around anymore. Well, no, there's not, but it really can't be overstated that this still has an effect on our culture today and how we view ourselves. And there's still echoes of that in, a lot of Protestant culture, but a lot of Catholic culture as well. There aren't literally pilgrims walking around, but you still have this whole idea of modest is hottest and purity rings and, I kissed dating goodbye and the Duggars. Look at the Duggar family. And it's not literally Puritans, but it has those echoes of it. Mm-hmm. Those are the roots. And this is what has grown from those roots. So it's still relevant. Even though there are not literally Puritans walking around, it still plays a role. It still has an effect on us today, hundreds of years later. Mm-hmm. And so it's not something that should just be brushed off. Oh, well, there's not Puritans around anymore, so why should we even care?
Right. This is why we have to recognize the effect that Puritans had on America. They didn't die off and their philosophy went away. Mm-hmm. They made a profound impact on America, and it has continued to today. And even we see Catholicism was influenced by some of these very scrupulous and misinterpreted theologies. So you see Jansenism was a heresy that occurred after, kind of when Puritanism was thriving or shortly thereafter. Jansenism basically, it boils down to it misinterpreted or didn't appreciate the role of God's mercy in the church. And so in Jansenism, Christians thought that they really could only go to Holy Communion once a year and that they just were not worthy of entering into a relationship with God. And I see a lot of Puritan influence in Jansenism. And so that mindset that we're depraved and that we weren't created good really pervaded so many cultural mindsets and religious mindsets at the time that have had a legacy that it's carrying on to today. And I think this is like when you're in a dysfunctional family, maybe every generation has been alcoholics from 200 years ago, and you have to be the kid that breaks the cycle. That I think that's something our generation is being called to do in the Catholic Church. Our parents were raised in really confused times in the Catholic Church. Yeah. We've talked about this. It was just a mess. Vatican II was misinterpreted. And then we got John Paul II, who basically reinvigorated our generation. And he was amazing. And he told us, don't be afraid. Do not be afraid. That was his mantra to the youth. And I think that our generation really is called to stand up and say, no more. This Puritan idea of Christianity has got to stop. And we're going to stand up and we're going to say, we believe that God created man and woman and that he created humans good and that he created human beings as body-soul composites. So we're not just a soul that's floating around in a disposable body. We were meant to be a united body and soul as human beings. And we're going to act in a way that reflects the beliefs that we have about God and what we know to be true. So I feel that we're in a special time right now to raise our kids with a different interpretation than what has been really promoted in our culture for hundreds of years now. It's time to break the cycle and say goodbye to Puritanism. Your time is up. You had your fun, and it's our turn.
And, especially as Catholic women, I think that's even more important because, as we've talked about before, the church is a very feminist organization. Mm-hmm. I know that in the popular culture, people don't like to say that because, oh, well, you can't have sex whenever you want, so that must be bad. Or, you can't be a priest. But if you actually look again at what the Catholic Church believes, like that Fulton Sheen quote that you mentioned, and the role of women in the church, it's, incredibly feminist, and women they're held up, not pushed down. But then you look at Puritanism and it's the exact opposite. And women are sort of the ultimate victims there, right, where they're the ones that get the brunt of everything. Men in a lot of these cultures, especially today, mm-hmm. Men can do whatever they want. Men can sleep around. Men can, victimize women left and right. But it's the woman who ends up being the dirty, broken, shamed one, right, because she failed somehow.
Right. Right.
And, now it becomes women have to be the gatekeepers of modesty. And, mm-hmm. It's, and they're the ones that are held responsible for everything. And it's taking away a lot of the feminism that the church has and the strength that the church has for women and this position of honor almost in a sense. Right. And instead now women are these, it's like on the one hand, you have to sit there and be quiet and not say anything and not really have an opinion and, safeguard your virtue and your purity. But then on the other hand, it's like you have this dual nature where you're not just the church mouse, you're also this vixen that's just waiting to tempt, these godly men. Mm-hmm. And neither one of those is really accurate or fair to women. And it's just this perverse attitude and outlook towards sex and modesty and being a woman. And it floors me that there are so many people who still buy into that. And for anyone who sits there and thinks, oh, well, no, there's not people that don't. All you have to do is turn on TLC and look at, any of the shows that feature the Duggar family. Mm-hmm. 19 kids and counting maybe off air because of the whole scandal with Josh Duggar, but the Duggar family in general, the daughters and so on, are still around. And this is the worldview that they aspire to. This is the worldview that they hold. And this is a family, even despite the sex abuse scandal with Josh Duggar, is still admired by God knows how many people across the country, including Catholics. And that's disturbing because it's not a healthy worldview.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned the how Puritanism is kind of counterintuitive to feminism, because feminism properly understood and how it was originally understood it says that men and women are equal. That's it. And in America, we have achieved equality. Now the feminist movement has transformed into this rabid animal that nobody likes. I mean, women don't identify as feminists anymore. They're pretty much a fringe minority because they've gone off and created, it's basically a man-hating organization now. But I mean, you see the effect, you see Catholicism holding up the authentic view of feminism in holding Mary and still in such high regard, and in honoring the role of women religious and the role of mothers. I mean, there is no valid argument for that the Catholic Church is holding back women, because the Catholic Church has always held up women and given them proper honor and respect. What you do see, though, is that effect of Puritanism in America. And this is, I want people to understand that this is an American phenomenon. We don't have this Puritan influence on Christianity as strongly in other countries. So I had a professor from Austria who came to the US and he was shocked because he said in his town in Austria, it was a Catholic town. There was a fountain in the middle of the town with Our Lady standing on it. She was lactating, and the water that came out of the fountain was like the milk coming from her breast. And in America, this would be so scandalizing. You would have like riots to cover up the statue, you know, because we don't have a healthy view of the human body or of women. But in Austria, this is where people like got their water every day. And like, this was the centerpiece of the town. And it never occurred to anyone that there was something strange or off base about this fountain. And so he came here and he was like, Puritanism like has ruined America. So it really is very, very strong here. And so we have to be aware that this is something that we as American women have to stand up and say no more. But I wanted to make a comment about a story, and this is not a one-off anomalous story. This is just emblematic of how Puritanism has influenced America. But we saw the Maddie Runkles story got a lot of media attention last year. Maddie Runkles was a Catholic a Christian high school student. She went to a very small, I think, evangelical Christian school. Mm-hmm. The students signed pledges to remain abstinent, which great. Like, you shouldn't be having sex before marriage when you're in high school anyway. But they signed these abstinence pledges, and Maddie became pregnant. Her boyfriend did not go to the school, but Maddie, when it was discovered that she was pregnant, was basically banned from the school. She wasn't allowed to walk at her graduation. She was removed from all her leadership roles. This was a very small school, and so she was the head of several different groups and clubs. And I think she was originally expelled, but then her father, who was like the chairman of the board, was able to walk back some of the punishments, but she still wasn't allowed to walk at graduation. She was still removed from her leadership roles, and she still had to face, what's it called? She couldn't go to school for a few days. She was suspended. So the message that Maddie Runkles was trying to send was she was punished not because really she had broken the abstinence pledge, because she said there were a lot of kids at the school who had broken the abstinence pledge. She was punished because there was evidence that she had broken it, which is that she became pregnant and she chose not to have an abortion. So there was this mishandling really of this whole abstinence pledge, because how would anyone really know if a boy had broken it? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Unless he voluntarily came forward and said that he broke it. So we see even sometimes where this Puritan influence on Christianity leads to these unintended but terrible consequences, where a girl might be motivated to have an abortion just so that she can hide evidence that she did something that wasn't allowed by her school, if that makes sense. So there's this standard that it seems like wasn't thought out very well.
And it's funny because in the case of Maddie Runkles, like you mentioned, and I'm sure countless other cases that don't get media attention, you have these people that say that they're pro-life, and it's you just want to take them and say, well, that's great that you don't want people to have abortions, but you realize what you're doing is driving women to have abortions. Right. Being pro-life is more than just saying, oh, abortion is bad. Like, you have to actually, I mean, it's just mind-boggling, this idea that, oh, well, sex is so bad, that it's so dirty, that if a girl has sex when she's not married, we're going to punish her so severely. It's like, well, you might as well just drive her to the abortion clinic then, especially when you're talking about a teenager. Right. That you're going to make it difficult for her to continue going to school, for her to graduate. And then imagine, again, someone that's in college. Like, most colleges and universities are not set up to support, students that are also mothers. Right. It's just, and when it comes from an evangelical community or organization that claims to be pro-life, it just makes you want to sit there and shake them. Like, what are you thinking? Because you're contradicting what you supposedly believe. Right. Yes, this girl made a mistake, okay, but she's doing the right thing now, and you're punishing her, what, because she had sex? Right. Exactly. Because that's apparently the worst thing in the world that a woman can do? Right. And no, it's not good that a teenage girl had sex outside of marriage. That's not a good thing. We all know that. But you know what? It's been done. She's doing the right thing now. why don't you try supporting her?
Right.
And helping her to move forward to do better in the future than, well, let's just publicly shame her.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's, 1679 or something. And
right. Yeah, and it's always going to fall disproportionately on the woman, because the woman is always going to carry evidence of sexual sin where the man is not. And so that's just another indication that Puritanism didn't have it right. And what we have to offer as Catholics is something that is extremely refreshing to the culture. Nobody realizes it because the media portrays us as Puritans, but we are not. And what we have to offer is something that really will transform our culture. So that's an important message.
Another thing too that we had, kind of touched upon a little bit and haven't really mentioned too much is the idea of modesty. And that's another thing that, because Puritanism obviously has negatively affected how we view sex, but there's also the issue of modesty as well, which you can see a lot in today's evangelical circles again, and even some Catholic circles. The idea of modest is hottest. And, again, you can look at the Duggars as an example of this. You can only wear skirts. You can't wear pants. And, you can't show your shoulders. And, oh, no cleavage because that would be bad. And so how do you feel like Puritanism has influenced modesty? Because it's not just an issue of sex.
Right. Okay, so Puritans actually had a dress code. And like I said, Puritanism was founded in reaction to, I feel like it's a bad sign whenever something's founded in reaction to something else. Puritanism was founded in reaction to the Church of England because they thought the Church of England was too Catholic. Well, one thing that British people were doing at the time, members of the Church of England, is dressing in really ornate and over-the-top ways that were created to show their rank in society. So one of the fashions was like these lace collars. There were cutout sleeves, and the cutouts were not to show skin, but they were to show other layers of fabric underneath the cutout. And the point of that was that you can show all these layers that you were able to afford because you are a wealthy person. Mm-hmm. And so the Puritans banned like all this jewelry and fashion. They still did wear like different colors, but they basically banned anything that was ornate or showy or ostentatious in reaction to this. Something interesting, though, is that they did allow people who were of a higher station to wear those fashions. So for Puritans, it was kind of about dressing in a way that reflected who you were. It was kind of classist for the Puritans. And in Massachusetts, which is one of the places that the Puritans colonized, people would be fined, even if they weren't Puritans, for wearing these fashions that they had banned if they weren't wealthy. So if they were poor or middle class people, they would be fined for wearing things they weren't supposed to. So what you see is this very strict rule book that kept being revised. You can't wear this, you can't wear this. They would add things to it, they would take things away. And it was this constant battle for Puritans to have to know what was allowed by the rule book in order to wear so that they wouldn't be in conflict with their religion. Well, some Catholics have, for some reason, thought that this was a good way to approach modesty in the Catholic Church. And there's a complete disconnect when we approach modesty as a set of rules. There are books written by Catholics that literally have lists in the back that tell you to get a ruler and measure. Is your shirt 2 inches below your clavicle? If you bend over, can you see this in the mirror? And you're literally supposed to get a ruler and measure to see if your sleeves and your skirt and your neckline are a certain length. That is perverted. That's not the Catholic view of modesty. So we always have to go back in the Catholic Church to anything that's related to our body. We have to know, okay, our bodies were created good. Is what I'm doing a reflection of the fact that my body was created good? And all creation reflects God. So we're made in the image of God. All visible creation is a reflection of God. So is the way that I'm dressing expressing the fact that I am a creation of God, that I am his child. I mean, there isn't a calculus that needs to go into this. God gave us consciences, and he gives us parents as we're growing up to help us to form those consciences. So I think we have to realize that there are a lot of things in the Catholic Church that are up to individual discretion, and the church trusts us to make the right decisions. And if we're making a decision that's clearly wrong, but we don't realize it, it also tells us that there's fraternal correction. So someone can come along and be like, I can see your whole butt hanging out of the back of that mini skirt. I don't know if you realized it. Like, that would be fine. But the idea that there's a rule book is completely a betrayal of what we believe. It's not a good way to approach modesty. And we have to stop thinking that the Puritan approach to anything was a good idea. It's just, Catholics, stop acting like Puritans, please.
And it goes back to, I mean, again, being kind of anti-feminist in my opinion, and this idea that something that is not really dirty, the Puritan view is that it is, and so often, at least today, when it comes to the whole modesty culture, it's women that are the ones that have to really be oriented towards that. And that's not to say that, I mean, you shouldn't dress appropriately for certain situations. Like if you're going to work and you work in a professional workplace, I mean, obviously you don't want to walk in jeans and flip-flops, but that's not a modesty issue.
Right.
But I mean, the point is, it's not men that have to sit there and worry, oh, well, are these jeans too tight and my butt is showing, just the outline of my butt in my jeans. Right. Men don't have to worry about these things. It's only women that do. So this comes back to this whole anti-feminist idea that Puritanism has perpetuated. And that on top of that a woman's body is something dirty and disgusting to be hidden away because, it might tempt men. It's not, I don't want to make it seem like I'm saying that, someone should walk around in hot pants and, a bra for a top on a Saturday down the road. But this idea that if you wear cap sleeves, that you're somehow, immodest and causing men to have a near occasion of sin. Well, one, it's not your job to prevent someone else from sinning. It's not a woman's job to prevent men from sinning. And that is something that I think, again, goes back to Puritanism. It's not, like, we are not supposed to be the safeguards against men sinning. That's on them. Mm-hmm. Men have to worry about their own sins. We worry about ours. Like, we're not responsible for preventing men from sinning because we dress too lasciviously. Mm-hmm. And two, our bodies are not dirty or wrong. You don't have to cover yourself up in yards and yards and yards of heavy fabric lest someone see that you have a womanly shape. I mean, like, we're women. We have women's bodies. That's okay.
It's actually okay beautiful. Right. It's good. It's good that we have that shape. And every man is different. I mean, to think that there's a rule book that every woman can follow and it's going to prevent every man from sinning is just a complete ignorance of the way that human minds work. And one rule of thumb that I think might be a good approach for modesty for people who are looking for a guideline is, did you put something on with the intention of seducing somebody other than your husband? If you did, if you did, it's probably not something that you should wear. But it comes down to what your intention was in putting it on. If you put something on because you think it's beautiful, then that is not going to break a Catholic modesty rule. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So there's a reason why the Catholic Church doesn't have a rule book. I mean, other religions do. If you look at Sharia law, there is a rule book of how women have to dress. If you look at Puritanism, there was a rule book for how people had to dress. The Catholic Church very well could have followed in those traditions and created a rule book, but there is a reason why she didn't. In her wisdom, she knew that it wasn't in line with Catholic theology and our view of the body. And the Catholic Church trusts people to understand that sin comes from an intention to do something sinful. Putting on a shirt that's 3 inches below your collarbone versus 2 fundamentally cannot be a sinful act, unless you're doing it because you think that a shirt that's 3 inches below your collarbone is going to seduce somebody. Good luck with that.
And I also don't want it to, with everything that's been said about, women being the gatekeepers for male sin, I don't want it to make it sound like I'm trying to be anti-men here. Mm-hmm. Like, there are not men necessarily running around holding women to these standards. This is, it's both men and women that's doing it. So this isn't like, oh, there's a bunch of evil men who hate women. No, it's just something that's ingrained into the culture for a lot of people.
Right.
They're not even aware that they're doing it. It's not something that they think of. It's not something that they are actively thinking, oh, well, but that's the takeaway. When you actually stop and examine what it is, that's what you get to.
Right.
So it's hard to actively break away from the culture too, when it's something that you've been raised in, when it's something that you've grown up with, when it's all you've known. Mm-hmm. Stepping back and saying, no, this isn't good. I'm not going to do this anymore. That's incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
So I don't want to downplay that. This isn't something that would be easy for anyone to do. But the point is this is harmful. It's harmful for men, harmful for men, harmful for women. It doesn't benefit anyone, and it perpetuates all of these negative, stereotypes and viewpoints, and it's just something that we have to break away from, as painful and difficult as it may be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a good note to leave off on, because we have just been seeing the effects of Puritanism. Like, it comes up in articles that are posted on Catholic sites where people seem to just be kind of overly scrupulous or overly concerned with whether they're abiding by the right rule book when it comes to our bodies. And I think we do really have to take a step back and ask, how did we get to this point? And what can we do as Catholic women to kind of change the way that our children are going to view the culture? Because we've just been raised in a really confusing time. And it's going to take some hard work. It's going to take study and understanding theology and history, and encouraging each other along the way to break that really dysfunctional cycle that we have. But I think it is possible. So Cassie and I were thinking it would be fun to start a little segment at the end of our shows where we talk about a favorite product that we have. This isn't sponsored. We just thought it would be fun. More of just, we talk so much theology, and we do talk about kind of our personal history with the different theologies that we discuss, but it would be fun just to get to know you guys on a more one-on-one level and get to know what you like and what we like. And so we thought we would share some products that we like today. You want to go first?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I actually wanted to mention what I'm wearing. This is Too Faced Melted Matte and Gingerbread Man, and it is one of my favorite lipsticks. You've probably seen me wearing it on the videos quite a few times. It actually smells nice. It actually smells not like gingerbread, really. Maybe more like cookies or something. But it smells nice, so I'm always a little happy when I put it on, because it's like this nice smell. And I like it because it's red, but it's not like really over the top or loud. It's more of a warm toned red. So at least on me, it's not as bold, and so I don't feel like I'm making a huge statement with it the way I am with a super darker lip or something that's a lot brighter. So it's good everyday red, in my opinion. And it's nice matte. It dries really quickly and it doesn't come off. I've been drinking my Diet Coke this whole time, as you saw, and it's still here. So yeah, you can get it at Sephora. I think it's exclusive to Sephora. So if you're looking for a good lipstick, it's a limited edition. So you would need to go get it now while supplies last. But I would definitely highly recommend it, because it is one of my favorite lipsticks right now.
And what's it called again?
Too Faced Melted Matte in Gingerbread Man.
Okay. Cassie's kind of my beauty icon because I don't understand how to like put on eyeshadow very well. I only own like one lipstick, and I see her wearing this lipstick all the time and it just looks phenomenal. And we're in this group where people try different makeups and stuff, and I just kind of sit back admiringly and wish that I understood what they were doing. But everyone who has tried this lipstick that she's wearing, like everyone, regardless of their skin tone, hair color, eye color, everything, it looks good on everyone. It's like this magic lipstick that just really, I don't know. I'm sure I'm going to be the one who gets it and it just looks horrible, but I really want to try it. It's a little out of my price.
Like everyone, it's a great shade.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And for some people, I've noticed like it looks brighter on other people and darker on other people. Right. And like on me, I think it's much, like I said, much more low key kind of red. But regardless of whether, you know, how it looks on other people, it still looks good.
Yes.
There's one girl in the group that's got, you know, red hair and really pale skin, and it looks amazing on her. You know, she looks completely different from me. Her coloring and everything is very different, but it still looks just as good on her. Yeah. Like, there's no one that this lipstick looks bad on. So if you need a lipstick, head to Sephora, Too Faced Melted Matte and Gingerbread Man. It's got a nice little cult following, and it's for a reason.
Yes, it's one of those. It's like the Orgasm blush. I hate the name of it, but it's like a cult favorite too. So I think everyone that's following makeup right now is wearing Orgasm blush and Gingerbread Man lipstick. Well, my product today, I got this sample, and I have no idea how to say the name of this company. There it is. OUAI. It is a dry shampoo foam. So dry shampoo, I have a ton of hair, but it's really fine. Most of it, like I have some like wiry gray hair mixed in there, and then I have like some wiry black hair, but most of it is this like brown hair and super, super fine. So I just have tons of it. And for whatever reason with my hair type, when I spray dry shampoo on it, if I skip a day of washing, because I am one of those people that washes my hair every day, because it just gets oily quickly. The dry shampoo makes it worse. I don't know. It's like it adds product and doesn't take away oil or dirt like it magically does for so many people. So this foam, I have found, tends to be able to remove the dirt without feeling like it's adding product. So it has a bit of a strong smell. It's a good smell, but I do get migraines. And so a lot of times if a product has a strong smell, I'll get a migraine from it, even if it's a good, strong smell. But this one hasn't so far caused any issues for me with migraines. So those of you that do get migraines triggered by strong smells might want to be aware of that before you try this. But so far, so good. I didn't work out this morning, so I didn't wash my hair, and I tried this, and I'm happy with it. So I wanted to mention that. Like I said, these aren't sponsored. We just want to start talking about things that we like and ask you if there's anything that you want to share with us, because we appreciate the recommendations, and that's what causes us to buy most of the things that we buy is recommendations.
Yeah, it kind of fits with, you know, the theme a little bit of what we're talking about too, coincidentally, you know, because hey, it's okay to have fun with makeup and clothes and, you know, hair things. Yes. Not immodest to do so.
Actually, it's good because we were created to as good, and reflections of God, and beauty is a good thing. It's always good to be seeking beauty. So, absolutely. Any comments that you have on Puritanism, recommended reading, we would love to hear it in the comments section. I'll post a few links. There's a historical society in New England. I forgot what it's called, but they have some great articles on like the effect of Puritanism, or just Puritanism, and how it kind of played out in the early history of America. So I'll post those articles because it's a good there's no theological interpretation. It's just history. So it's a good background on that. And then anything else I can find as I do a little bit more research, I'll post in the comments as well. Oh, and do you want to mention our Twitter account? I don't know if we mentioned that last week.
Yes. Yeah. We are now on Twitter. So if
I think we have like 4 followers.
And you want to follow us, you know, it's Twitter, and our handle is Fidelis Women.
At Fidelis Women. Yes. Yes, we hope to see you there. Okay, everyone, we'll have a very Merry Christmas, and we will see you maybe next week, maybe not. We'll see. Take care.